richly blessed. Okay, maybe not choose. What about food? If you can say that you have about 3 meals a day, every day, just let's think back for the month of November. Every day this month, you had about 3 meals, or you could have had 3 meals. If that's you, you are rich and richly blessed. If you're like me, the problem isn't having meals, the problem is having too many meals. I'm not trying to start a fight, but the reality is most of us are rich and richly blessed. In fact, I remember sitting in a class and a professor was explaining to us why a particular nationality seemed to lack the same or a certain degree of intellect. It sounded so offensive when he said this. I couldn't believe he would say that. The class was looking around, and he began to explain that this group of people live in a place where most of them cannot get the necessary calories throughout the day. And because most of them cannot get the necessary calories throughout the day, that means that as mothers are pregnant, as babies are being developed, that their minds do not get the necessary nutrition to develop in such a way so they seem intellectually lacking. We are rich and richly blessed. This is the first reality in the text. And until you understand how blessed, how rich and richly blessed you are, you'll miss the point. Because you'll be thinking about somebody else over there or over here who has this or has something you don't. And that's the mistake we make. We tend to count our wish list and not our gift list, what we've already been given. Okay, you're missing it. It's found in Exodus chapter 16. In Exodus chapter 16 is a lesson of counting cornbread. That's a lesson. The lesson of counting cornbread. Because in Exodus chapter 16, we're introduced to the people of Israel. And they're actually in the desert. And while they're in the desert, they start complaining about what they don't have. And you know what God does? God responds by giving them manna from heaven. Woo! I like that because that teaches us that God will supply our need. God will rich and richly bless. God will supply our need. Not only will he supply it, but it's sufficient because the text says that they were to eat as much as they wanted until they was full. God will supply our need, and it's sufficient for our need. Oh, you're missing this. It's sufficient for our need. And I know you're here thinking, well, Reverend, you don't understand my circumstances. Reverend, you don't know that I had a problem just finding a place to live last month. And I understand that. And I'm not making light of that. But I am arguing for the case that the fact that you are here today gives some credence and some evidence that even though yesterday may have been difficult, today is here because God supplied your need. And it was sufficient for your need. You may have had a hard childhood. Mama may not have had much. Daddy may not have been there. But you're here today because God supplied your need. And it was sufficient for, it didn't feel like it at the time, but you made it because you're here. So first we see in the text, Exodus 16, that God supplied cornbread, or it's actually manna from heaven. And it was sufficient for the need. But then in that same text, Exodus chapter 16, it said that they could have as much as they wanted, but they couldn't store anything in their hands or their pockets unless they were preparing for Sunday or the Sabbath. They couldn't store. If they did, even after one night, it would go rotten. Worms and bugs. It would be nasty. Because God was trying to show them that, remember, I am your source, not what you have in your hand. My hands, this is what God is saying, is the source of your supply. I know you got a good job. I know you got a good education. I know you got good family members you can call up almost any time. I know you've been blessed, but I am the source of your supply. Now, you need to understand this, because if you understand this, then you won't worship anybody, you're missing this, but God. Because when you recognize that even in your current circumstances, that God is your source, when there's layoffs and cutbacks and there's difficulties and drama, and you call that person and they don't want to assist anymore, that's all right. This was what God was trying to, he was trying to remind me, you can store it all up, but at the end of the day, I am the source. I am